chosen one. Stop scrolling for a second. Yes, you. This message isn't here by accident. There comes a moment when God doesn't ask politely anymore. He steps in. When you keep ignoring the quiet whispers, when you keep walking in circles, he decides it's time to reprogram the way you think. Not gently, not gradually, powerfully. If you've been feeling like everything familiar is being shaken, it's not random. God is about to brainwash you, not to control you, but to cleanse the lies, habits, and patterns you refuse to release. Think about it. How many times has life tried to nudge you toward a different path, but you resisted because it felt uncomfortable? How many coincidences have you brushed off? There's a point where God says, enough. That's the moment where his hand moves from gentle guidance to divine intervention. And if you're watching this, you might already be standing at that line. This video is going to walk you through what happens when God decides to take over the renewal process himself. It's not a sweet bedtime story. It's a spiritual reality check. Because when the chosen one drifts too far from purpose, God doesn't leave them there. He begins a radical mental transformation, something so deep that you'll barely recognize the person you were before. Over the next few minutes, we're going to explore the subtle ways God tries to get your attention before he acts more forcefully, what divine brainwashing truly means, and why it's nothing like human manipulation, the unmistakable signs that this process has begun in your life, how to stop fighting it and start flowing with it. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you to support this message. If it hits your spirit like this video, share it with someone who needs a wake-up call, and comment below where you are in your spiritual journey. Your engagement doesn't just help the channel, it helps push this message to more chosen ones who are right on the edge of their transformation. And if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming episodes that unpack these spiritual turning points in depth. What you're about to hear might shake you, but that's exactly what it's meant to do. You've reached a moment where staying the same is no longer an option. Take a deep breath.
Get ready.
This isn't just another video. This is the starting point of a divine mental reset. Before God flips your entire mindset, he gives chance after chance. He starts softly. He drops hints that only someone with spiritual sensitivity can catch. Maybe it's a quiet stirring in your spirit that something needs to change. Maybe it's those late nights where your thoughts won't let you rest, as if someone is whispering direction into your heart. God rarely begins with loud interventions. He begins with whispers, nudges, and gentle redirections. For a while, you might even respond. You feel a burst of conviction. You make promises. You try to shift a few habits, but then life gets noisy again. The old patterns creep back in. You start negotiating with God, saying things like, I'll get serious when the time is right, or I just need to figure things out first. The truth is, he's already been patient. He's already extended opportunities to align with his purpose. Then come the subtle external shifts. A job that once felt stable starts to feel draining. A relationship that used to make sense suddenly becomes complicated. Plans that looked solid inexplicably fall apart. At first, it seems like bad luck. But look closer. These are not random disruptions. They're divine interventions designed to get your attention. When soft conviction fails, God begins rearranging circumstances. He closes doors that lead nowhere. He removes distractions you wouldn't willingly let go of. But some chosen ones still don't move. You try to force doors open again. You rebuild what he already dismantled. You chase what he's clearly pulling away. And each time you resist, the pressure increases. It's not cruelty. It's love that refuses to let you settle for less than your destiny. There's a moment where God says, I've whispered, I've redirected, I've removed, and yet you remain stuck. Now I'll do what you won't. This is the turning point. This is where his involvement becomes unmistakable. It's the place where delays, discomfort, and confusion are no longer signs of misfortune, but signs that you've entered the next stage of divine pursuit. If your life has felt like a series of unexplainable disruptions lately, you might not be under attack, you might be under transformation. God isn't ignoring you. He's applying the next level of pressure to shift you out of spiritual autopilot. Before the mental reset comes, there's always this stage when God has tried everything else. He's patient, but he's purposeful. And when whispers don't work, he makes sure you can't ignore the message anymore. The phrase, God is going to brainwash you, sounds intense, almost alarming at first. That's because in a human context, brainwashing means manipulation, someone forcing their ideas into your mind, stripping away freedom, and controlling how you think. But when it comes to God, the meaning flips entirely. Divine brainwashing isn't about control, it's about cleansing. It's about breaking mental strongholds that have kept you in cycles of doubt, fear, sin, or stagnation. Think of your mind like a sponge. Over time, it absorbs everything. Cultural noise, personal trauma, unhealthy habits, lies you've believed about yourself, and narratives that others have spoken over you. Eventually, that sponge gets so saturated that there's no space left for clarity. Divine brainwashing is when God squeezes out everything that doesn't belong, even if it means applying pressure. He begins a deep cleansing, Not at the surface level, but at the core of how you think, perceive, and respond to life. This process isn't new. Look at Saul of Tarsus in the Bible. He was convinced he was serving God while persecuting Christians. Then, in a moment, everything he believed was shattered on the road to Damascus. God didn't debate with him gently. He confronted him, blinded him, stripped his identity, and rebuilt him as Paul, the apostle who changed history. That wasn't manipulation. That was transformation. His old framework was demolished so a divine one could be built. When God brainwashes you, he's not erasing your personality or individuality. He's removing the programming that came from fear, ego, trauma, culture, and rebellion. He's rewriting your mindset so it aligns with truth, purpose, and destiny. This is why the Bible talks about renewing the mind, because a renewed mind doesn't just behave differently, it sees differently. The process can feel overwhelming. You may start questioning everything you used to defend. Beliefs that once felt solid may suddenly feel shaky. Friendships, habits, or opinions that shaped your identity may begin to lose their grip. That's not confusion, it's recalibration. God is washing away layers that no longer serve who you're becoming. This is also why chosen ones often go through seasons of isolation during this transformation. When your mindset is being rebuilt, external voices can interfere. God often quiets the noise around you so he can speak directly to your mind. Divine brainwashing is God saying, I'm not asking you to change anymore. I'm changing the way you think, so real transformation can begin. It's radical, it's uncomfortable, and it's unstoppable once it starts. God doesn't initiate a deep mental transformation for no reason. He does it because the way you think determines everything about your life. Your mindset shapes your choices, relationships, faith, and even how much of your calling you actually walk in. Sometimes the gap between who you are and who you're meant to become isn't talent, opportunity, or even faith. It's your thought patterns. And when those patterns become too rigid, too misaligned, or too contaminated by the world, God steps in to reset them. He allows radical mind shifts because gradual adjustments aren't always enough. There are seasons where gentle conviction works, but for chosen ones, people with specific spiritual assignments, there comes a time when compromise can't continue. You might have grown comfortable living with a mix of truth and distortion. Maybe you believe in God, but still operate with old mental blueprints. Fear masquerading as wisdom, pride disguised as strength, or bitterness justified as boundaries. Those mindsets block what God is trying to build in his mercy. God doesn't let you stay stuck there. He allows the shift to happen in a way that forces separation between the old and the new. It's not that he wants to confuse you. He wants to liberate you. Radical shifts break strongholds that subtle tweaks never could. Think about it. If a tree has grown crooked for years, you can't fix it with a light touch. You have to cut, straighten, and rebuild its structure. Throughout history, we see this pattern. Moses was raised as Egyptian royalty, fully immersed in their culture and mindset. But before God used him to lead Israel, he took him into the wilderness for 40 years. That season stripped away Egypt's mentality and forged a new one rooted in obedience and humility. Without that mental shift, Moses could never have carried the weight of his calling. The same principle applies today. If your destiny involves leadership, influence, or spiritual impact, God won't let worldly patterns shape your foundation. He allows radical shifts to break you free from beliefs you didn't even realize were limiting you. Sometimes he even uses intense life disruptions to snap your mind out of survival mode and into spiritual clarity. This is why chosen ones often experience dramatic internal turning points. Moments where everything you thought you knew suddenly feels inadequate. It's not because God is cruel. It's because he refuses to build greatness on weak mental frameworks. Radical mind shifts are his way of making sure your foundation is unshakable before he elevates you. When God begins this deep mental reset, it doesn't happen quietly. There are usually clear, undeniable signs that something bigger than you is at work. At first, you might mistake it for random chaos, spiritual attack, or even burnout. But if you look closer, you'll recognize a pattern. God is rewiring the way you think, and your life starts reflecting it in unmistakable ways. One of the first signs is a sudden shift in your interests and desires. Things that used to grip your attention lose their appeal almost overnight. It could be certain habits, entertainment, relationships, or ambitions that once defined your identity. You don't always make a conscious decision to let go. It's like God quietly pulls the plug on their emotional power over you. You find yourself craving depth where you once chased distraction. Another major sign is intense internal conflict. The transformation doesn't feel smooth. It often feels like your mind is at war with itself. Old beliefs beliefs clash with new convictions. You question long-held opinions. You wrestle with choices that used to be automatic. It can feel exhausting, but that tension isn't proof that something's wrong. It's proof that God's hand is actively reshaping your mindset. Closed doors and divine redirection are also strong indicators. Plans that seemed secure may suddenly fall apart without explanation. Opportunities may vanish. People may drift away. Sometimes God doesn't gently ask you to let go. He removes what you won't release. These closures can sting in the moment, but they're often necessary to clear space for new direction. Then comes the season of unexpected isolation. Many chosen ones describe feeling pulled away from the crowd during this stage. It's not loneliness for the sake of suffering. It's God creating quiet so he can speak directly. External noise has to die down for internal renewal to take root. Friend groups may thin out. Social circles may shift, and what once felt like comfort may now feel foreign. You may also notice an unshakable conviction growing inside you. Even when you try to go back to old ways, something inside you won't let you fully settle. It's like spiritual friction, God's way of making sure backward steps feel uncomfortable. If several of these signs are showing up in your life, chances are you're not just going through a phase. You're in the middle of divine brainwashing, a season where God is cleansing your mindset, stripping away what doesn't belong, and preparing you for alignment with his purpose. It's unsettling, but it's sacred. Recognizing the signs helps you stop fighting the process and start cooperating with it. What feels like loss or confusion is actually evidence that God's hands are at work in your life, shaping something new beneath the surface. When God starts renewing your mind at a deep level, it's rarely a gentle, comfortable process. It often feels like everything familiar is being torn apart piece by piece. There's a reason for that. Transformation requires dismantling the old before the new can be built, and that dismantling can be painful. It's like spiritual surgery. You can't remove something embedded in the heart or mind without cutting deep. Many chosen ones describe this phase as confusing, overwhelming, or emotionally exhausting. You might feel like you're losing your identity. Things that once gave you confidence no longer work. Habits that used to comfort you now leave you feeling empty. Friendships that once felt safe start to feel distant. It's not because you're broken. It's because God is stripping away everything that was holding up a version of you that can't survive where he's taking you. This pain isn't punishment. It's pruning. Just like a gardener cuts healthy branches so the plant can grow stronger, God cuts away attachments, mindsets, and behaviors that would limit your spiritual growth. That pruning hurts precisely because it touches areas you've relied on for years. Your coping mechanisms, your routines, your old sense of control. He's not being cruel. He's being precise. In this stage, it's common to feel misunderstood. People around you might not grasp what's happening internally. They see your changes but don't understand the spiritual process behind them. You might even struggle to articulate it yourself. That's because transformation is often invisible before it's visible. God is doing deep work beneath the surface, rewiring thought patterns, healing emotional wounds, and strengthening your spiritual core. It's also a season where your faith gets tested. You might not have clear answers. You may pray and not feel the same emotional highs as before. Old spiritual routines might suddenly feel dry. This isn't a sign that God has pulled away. It's actually a sign that he's maturing your faith, moving you from relying on emotional experiences to standing firm on trust. And here's the power hidden inside the pain. Transformation produces resilience. Once God rebuilds your mind, you won't be easily swayed by opinions, fear, or temptation the way you once were. You'll think differently. You'll see differently. You'll respond differently. What once shook you will no longer move you. This stage may not be glamorous, but it's essential. Pain is the evidence that something is shifting. God isn't destroying you. He's refining you. And when the process is complete, you'll look back and realize the pain was proof that his hands were at work, carefully molding you into who you were always meant to become. There comes a point in every divine transformation where you have a choice. Keep resisting and prolong the discomfort, or surrender and cooperate with the process. Many chosen ones stay stuck longer than necessary, not because God's plan is unclear, but because they keep fighting the reset. They cling to old habits, familiar identities, or comfortable environments that no longer fit who they're becoming. But the moment you stop wrestling and start embracing what God is doing, the entire journey shifts from chaos to clarity. Embracing the reset starts with acknowledgement. You have to be honest with yourself about where you are. Instead of seeing everything as random hardship, you begin to recognize God's hand in the disruption. Closed doors stop feeling like rejection and start looking like redirection. Isolation stops feeling like abandonment and begins to feel like preparation. When your perspective changes, resistance loses its grip. The next step is intentional surrender. This doesn't mean passively sitting back. It means actively aligning your heart with what God is doing. You pray differently. Not just asking for the discomfort to end, but asking for wisdom to understand what he's shaping. You stop trying to resurrect what he's already buried. You stop forcing your way into spaces he's clearly closing off. This kind of surrender isn't weakness, it's trust in action. Practically, embracing the reset often involves adjusting your rhythms. You may find yourself drawn to spend more quiet time alone with God, studying, praying, or reflecting. You may start setting boundaries that protect your mental space. You may release relationships or environments that no longer support your growth. These aren't random impulses, they're part of God, reorganizing your life to match your renewed mind. It's also important to be patient with yourself. Transformation is rarely linear. There will be moments where you feel fully aligned and moments where you're tempted to slip back into old ways. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human and still in process. God doesn't expect perfection. He expects willingness. The key is to keep moving forward, even when you don't fully understand the details. When you embrace the reset, something powerful happens internally. The fear of the unknown begins to lose its hold. You start trusting God's timing more than your own plans. Peace begins to settle in places where anxiety once lived. Instead of constantly questioning, why is this happening to me? You start saying, I see what you're doing, and I'm willing. Fighting the process delays growth. Embracing it accelerates transformation. The reset isn't meant to break you. It's meant to rebuild you. And when you stop resisting, you give God room to finish what he started without unnecessary detours. Chosen one, if you've made it this far, pause for a moment and take this in. What you're going through isn't destruction. It's divine reconstruction. Every whisper, every closed door, every internal battle, and every moment of discomfort has been part of a bigger plan. God isn't trying to break your mind. He's trying to renew it, to align it with the destiny he's prepared for you since the beginning. This brainwashing isn't about losing yourself. It's about finally becoming the version of you that was buried under years of noise, fear, and compromise. You might not see the full picture yet, but you're in the middle of something sacred. God's process often looks chaotic before it looks clear. Just like a renovation site, everything has to be torn down before the beauty of the rebuild can be revealed. That's exactly what he's doing in your mind and heart, tearing out the old structures that can't support where you're headed and laying down foundations that are unshakable. It's easy to focus on the pain and forget the promise. But every time God removes something, he replaces it with something better. Where there was confusion, he plants clarity. Where there was fear, he builds confidence. Where there were toxic patterns, he writes truth. You may not feel it instantly, but day by day, thought by thought, your mind is being renewed. And when it's done, you won't just think differently. You'll live differently. Remember, this is not God taking away your freedom. This is him giving you real freedom. Freedom from cycles, from lies, from the mental clutter that's been holding you hostage. Once your mind is transformed, your faith deepens, your vision sharpens, your steps become more intentional, and you begin to walk in authority, not confusion. This is why you had to go through it. Because chosen ones can't build great things on weak foundations. Your journey isn't random, it's preparation. The very areas that once felt like breaking points will become the places where your strength is most visible. You'll look back and realize the discomfort wasn't God punishing you, it was him setting you apart. So lift your head, stand firm in this season. Don't rush the process. Don't shrink back because it feels unfamiliar. Trust that the one who began this reset will complete it. The transformation may have started with pressure, but it will end with power. This is your turning point. God isn't finished, he's just getting started.